Better get out here. We're surrounded by the FBI. I walk out the door and they've got police ribbon around the place, and we sued the federal government. We made an arrangement to purchase the Dinosaur. We all agreed on $5,000,
and we were in person and we saw Gus sell for $50 million, right?
That's a bit of an exponential raise in price. If I'd have been convicted of all of the charges that I was charged with, that would have been like 353 years in prison.
If you had $200 million, how would you allocate it as an investor?
You should buy what you like, not just because somebody says because it's rare. If a painting that some guy spends an afternoon creating can sell for $50 million, why shouldn't a T-Rex that somebody spent 25,000 hours working on be worth that?
Welcome to the Treasure Hunters podcast. My name is AJ, founder and CEO of the Treasure Trove. I am joined by my co-host Buster. Welcome, Buster. And we have a very special guest today in Pete Larson. Welcome to the podcast.
It's an honor to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. So your name has come up probably 100 times as we have been exploring the realm of all things dinosaurs, and we find your story and arc as a paleontologist and a highly curious person fascinating. So with that, I'd love to kind of go all the way back in time to your youth and get a sense of how did you get into this? How did you get this bug that you have?
So I grew up on a ranch in south central South Dakota on the Rosebud Indian Reservation, and I'm not Lakota, but my parents have a ranch there, or had a ranch there. They've since passed away, and so I picked up my first fossil when I was 4 years old. A tooth, an Oreodont tooth, a little mammal tooth, and it was black, but it was clearly a tooth. And we had a little local museum, and I took it to that local museum, and June Zeitner took me under her wing and became my mentor, and I was just hooked on fossils, and I've done just played with fossils since then. Didn't have a museum until I was 8 years old, in one of the shacks on my parents' ranch, and then went to collected all through school and high school, and got my parents to take me out a little bit further from the ranch, and anyway, then I ended up going to the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology, where I got my bachelor's and worked on my master's in paleontology, bachelor's in geology, master's in paleontology. And I then started the business still as an undergraduate with a friend of mine, Jim Honert. And then we expanded and got Bob Farrar and my brother Neil in the business, and started doing started out actually doing teaching specimens, or hand specimens to pass around to kids and stuff, and ended up doing museum work, and that's what we do today here at the Institute. Mostly about probably close to 90% of our business is directly or indirectly with museums, putting exhibit specimens in, whether they're original fossils or cast replicas, and so we get to show our stuff all around the world. And so since
Beautiful.
1970, been doing this since 1974 as a business. So that's
Amazing.
52 years, which is pretty cool.
The industry has changed quite a bit since then, obviously. Did you foresee that sort of happening? And is that one of the reasons why you wanted to make this, your career instead of just a passion or a hobby? Did you sort of see that coming?
To get a job in paleontology is not an easy thing. There aren't many jobs. You'd work as a professor, maybe you'd get to go out in the summer during summer vacation and do maybe a little bit of collecting and stuff for a week or two, or you can be a research paleontologist at a museum, perhaps. And most of the times when you're a teacher, you're not teaching paleontology, you're teaching something like anatomy or osteology. Working, to teach physicians about anatomy, that sort of thing. So I loved collecting fossils, and I love preparing fossils, and I've learned over the years to love putting skeletons together. And so, in order to do things, I'm probably not a very good employee. I work really hard, but I have my own ideas about things. And so the best way to be the best kind of employee I am is a self-employee. I'm self-employed. And
And
so
can
I get to do, if I want to go out collecting, just wake up in the morning and I want to go out collecting, I just do.
mm. And can you give us a sense? I mean, you've been doing this professionally since the mid 70s, like how our understanding of paleontology, understanding of dinosaurs has evolved since the time that you've gotten into this business. And I've heard you speak very fondly of other paleontologists like Robert Baker or even John Ostrom and others. Give us a lay of the land as to how this has really evolved since then.
So I guess I'm so lucky in the time that I'm here. It's paleontology has made great strides forward. Starting with Robert Bacher, pronounced Bacher.
Bucker, there you go.
Most
Good
people
job.
get that wrong, and John Ostrom. When they first started out, and this is about the same time around, 1972, 1974, and dinosaurs at that time were an unsuccessful lumbering reptiles that became extinct because they were too stupid to survive on their own. And they showed us, those two scientists showed us that they not only were not stupid, but they were actually the ancestors of today's living birds, at least theropods were. And so that part was very exciting. But then all these wonderful discoveries in this time, and our ability to prepare and collect has been improved tremendously because of technology. We've been able to develop new tools and things like microblasting using miniature sandblasting using sodium bicarbonate, 50 micron size particles to push out with compressed air to clean fossils so you can really see the details that no, it was not possible here, 50 years ago. And it's kind of a wonderful time to be. Also, we have things like discoveries like Liaoning in China, where they
Mm,
found all these feathered dinosaurs and all the things that when Bob Bacher was the first one to draw a dinosaur with feathers. And since then, now everybody knows they had feathers. In fact, probably all theropods, including T-Rex, had feathers. And so we live in this wonderful time of technology and science, the ability to travel easily. I've been to Mongolia, I've been to South America, I've been to Europe, I've been to Africa. A few places there are a few places I want to go that I haven't been yet, but
It's funny. It's like everybody seems to know that dinosaurs had feathers except for the movies.
except for the movies. But they're working on it. They're getting better. It's having those feathers and having them move. That was a also
mm,
yes, and including the time we get to live and see what dinosaurs actually freaking moved like
mm,
and lived like and looked and ran and moved and it's anyway. So having feathers move was a step upward from what was possible with the original Jurassic Park movies. And
mm.
some of that technology was, I mean, there are a lot of people developed, but I happen to work with some people from Pixar and stuff. And when they made like Monsters Inc. and making the fur move and stuff, that was a big, big thing, big deal.
Mm, mm, mm,
That's
So
very cool.
we live in I live in the best time to do what I'm doing.
mm.
Well, yeah, it's a good thing you weren't born in like 1800 because they hadn't even there was no knowledge of anything.
Well, so interestingly, there were people who like something like John Bell Hatcher, who
Mm,
by himself was going out with a horse and buggy, and he collected like 30 some Triceratops skulls. A Triceratops skull is not an easy thing to move, especially by yourself. And this guy was people like him and people like Charles Sternberg, um, uh, you know. Edward Drinker Cope and O.C. Marsh went out into the field and were able to go to places that nobody ever seen. I've been fortunate to go to a lot of places that nobody ever collected fossils before, and
mm.
and they're getting fewer and further between each time I've been able to find a spot that no one's ever been to before. But it's pretty exciting when you can go there and find everything you find is new.
Yeah, I mean, something our audience is so curious about is just how does one find a dinosaur fossil? And what is the process of uncovering it? And what are all the property rights associated? And we understand if you find fossils on federal land versus finding it on private land, there's all these divergent legal rules. I mean, there's how do you do it? Like where do you start with
So
all
this
this?
the simple version is the owner of the surface rights owns the fossils in the land.
Mhm.
So if it's the federal government owns the fossils. If it's a private landowner, the private landowner owns the fossils. So there are different laws governing different things. So federal land, it is not possible to collect fossils, vertebrate fossils. There are some possibilities of collecting certain invertebrate fossils on Forest Service land and BLM land. And if you're interested in that, you should check with the local authorities. But it is not possible to get a permit to collect on federal land unless you have a federal repository. And I worked as a actually on one excavation, I worked as the main investigator. And the permit was held by the museum in Buffalo, New York, and we collected some dinosaur material in the Cloverleaf Formation many years ago. But for me to collect it as a commercial person, no. For me to collect it as a scientist, I could get a permit to do that, but I'd have to name a repository. For a person without a degree, it's almost impossible for you'd have to have a lot of friends and somebody willing to vouch for you and all those things. So we as private individuals who are not part of the establishment of scientists that have positions in normal institutions. For anybody but that, you really are not going to be able to get a permit to collect fossils. So we're restricted to private lands, which is fine. There's way more federal and public lands that have dinosaurs in than there are private lands. So it's I think it's an okay thing to have those areas set aside just for research only and for so that these scientists have fresh places they can go to and make new discoveries and all that. That's good. But also, it's perfectly fine to if you have permission and from the landowner. Hopefully, if you're commercial, you're going to be paying that landowner something because if you're making money, those fossils are a resource that belong to that rancher or that farmer or that person who has a housing development. If they dig up fossils and you can collect those, then but many people will also allow just private individuals to collect fossils. And again, there's some certain spots on public lands where you can where the public is allowed to collect limited amounts of fossils too, of invertebrate fossils.
That's pretty
Mhm.
cool. One question I have is since you started collecting and you know since you were a kid pretty much, what has been the single biggest, if you could isolate sort of one thing technologically that has changed with identifying and finding dinosaur fossils? Like what's the biggest improvement over the last 50 years?
So finding and identifying satellite imagery is very helpful to try to find exposures. Of course, we didn't have that. You didn't have access to it 50 years ago. They had that, but not to the degree or to the resolution that we can get them now.
And that
Satellite
means
imagery,
that means literally looking at a satellite photo and trying to find dinosaurs that are sticking up out of the ground. Do I have that right?
sort of. Um, I don't think you could recognize a dinosaur from a photograph from a satellite. I don't think you could. It would be a very special circumstance that if you could. Maybe it was if there was a bone bed with lots of bones exposed, but resolution's pretty good. I don't think that you could. But in order to really see I guess in a photograph, you'd have to be able to read like the fine print on this bottle to from a satellite photo, and I don't think you can do that yet. Um, Drones also I think, can be pretty useful, especially if you're looking at something. Well, let's set that up. But what's that on the cliff face? I can see something with my eyes, but I
Mhm.
want to get at it closer, and I don't really want to dig 50 steps up to that to go take a look at that or rappel down from the top, which you can do. So you could theoretically, you can use a drone to maybe zoom in on it and maybe identify it from with drone footage. Technologically, there is no technological way to explore for fossils underground. None. Zero. We've tried them all. We've
Hmm.
tried ground penetrating radar. There's been where you set off to do, like, you do an explosion and then you record the waves coming back. That's been done. Seismic surveys have been done that don't show any fossils. They're just not, the resolution is not good enough. It's like that satellite photo. You just can't see anything. But in ground penetrating radar, um, the definition between the bone and the rock is not good enough. You see anomalies, and we dig down to those anomalies, and it turns out you can't even tell why there's an anomaly there. You don't. It There's
Hmm.
no. You can see the difference between, say, sandstone and siltstone, so you can see interfaces in that, but you can't. The fossil density and the rock density is so close that to date, it doesn't work. It may in the future, though. I mean, that's something that ground penetrating radar, I think, has real promise. And then especially if you have a dinosaur and you can't find the head, wouldn't it be good to go out and have some way to find a head using ground penetrating radar? Incidentally, there is one specimen at the Dinosaur National Monument where there was an Allosaurus, and the Allosaurus didn't have a head. And so there's these guys who collect what they call cut and bone. So they literally cut up dinosaur bone and make jewelry out of it. Okay, if it's just a chunk of bone, I'm okay with that, but don't you dig up a dinosaur and cut it up into jewelry. That's not cool. But they use a scintillometer, so basically a Geiger counter, to because quite a bit of the bones in the Morrison is radioactive, has a higher,
Hmm.
and so you can prospect for bones that way too. In the Hell Creek, it's very rare that we have anything that has much above just normal radiation. But there are a few. I've seen a few fossils that are out of the Hell Creek, so, and they're always black, which is interesting. Most Hell Creek is bone. Most Hell Creek
Hmm.
bone is brown. Um,
Hmm.
but those some of those black bones actually are pretty high in radioactivity. So either uranium or thorium has entered through the groundwater and is deposited in the pore spaces, along with minerals like pyrite and quartz and calcite and that sort of thing. But so people have used that to find in the Morrison to find bones.
Hmm.
But that's about it.
And tell us more about the Hell's Creek Formation in particular, because it seems to be a true hotbed for dinosaur discovery. What are the characteristics of that formation that make it such a recurring go-to location for paleontologists such as you?
So, in order to have dinosaur fossils, dinosaurs had to live in the area. They had to be buried rapidly, and then they have to be being eroded today. That's where we look to find dinosaurs. So the Hell Creek Formation is a very special formation. It has things like Triceratops and Tyrannosaurus Rex, Dakotaraptor, Anzu Struthiomimus sedens, all these wonderful Pachycephalosaurus wyomingensis, Dracorex hogwartsia, and Stygimoloch. All of these cool dinosaurs, uh, some of the coolest dinosaurs that ever were, because they're sort of the end of the evolutionary tree of dinosaurs, except for birds, of course. And they occur at right before that moment in time where that asteroid struck the Chicxulub Peninsula and caused their extinction. So this is the end of the age of dinosaurs, which makes those two things. You got really cool dinosaurs, and you have and they're the last ones. Make them, I think, just kind of the go-to formation, and they're preserved almost nowhere in the world. They're preserved in North America in the Hell Creek Formation and the Lance Formation, a little bit down in Colorado and New Mexico as well, but mostly in Wyoming, South Dakota, North Dakota, Montana, in this country, and then up into Canada also, into Alberta and Saskatchewan a bit. And
Mhm.
but it's the variation in the dinosaurs, again, are the biggest predator, the some of the very biggest duck-billed dinosaurs occur there, the biggest horned dinosaurs, and the coolest butt-headed dinosaurs too.
That's incredible. Now, I'm sure you have a good way to explain this, but what, in your opinion, are the perfect conditions for a dinosaur to die in for the fossil to be excellent today? Like, what had to happen while that dinosaur was dying to make it, an A plus specimen in 2026?
So the A plus specimen that has been collected in the last 20 years in the Hell Creek Formation, I think the best fossil, with the possible exception of maybe the type of T-Rex or Sioux, but is two dinosaurs called the dueling dinosaurs.
Mhm.
They were in a riverbed on a sandbar, and because there's too many broken teeth in among these two dinosaurs. So there's a Triceratops and a Nanotranus that were buried together. But we can I think, pretty succinctly describe a scenario as to how they got there. And they are literally two of the most complete dinosaurs that have ever been found in the Hell Creek Formation, and two of the most complete dinosaurs have been found anywhere. So they were buried under the ideal circumstances. So we know from a tooth embedded between two centra in the Triceratops neck from Nanotranus, and one buried in between the lateral and dorsal spine of the lumbar, or what would be the lumbar vertebrae, the right by the pelvis. Of course, they didn't have lumbars, but anyway, a tooth buried in between those two spines, which is basically the tenderloin of that Triceratops, a pie, and then miscellaneous teeth with that Triceratops, a pile of teeth by the foot of the Triceratops, and just past between the Triceratops foot, a pile of teeth, and right the Nanotranus skull with the side of its face crushed from the side like this, not crushed vertically in any way because it was still preserved in the side. They literally killed each other, and then there was an earthquake happened. And the sand, because it's in a seismite, what's called I know this from the stratigraphy there.
Yeah.
And so the ground shook. The saturated with water uh, point bar, the sandbar that they were on, liquefied, and they were just sucked down. And they were preserved with skin, and every bone's there to the tip of the tail of both dinosaurs. It's one of the most remarkable,
Unbelievable.
and and so you have, I mean, this wonderful scenario where these two animals killed each other, and the other nanotrans, there are more than one. There's a pack of nanotrans. The other ones ran away. We know there's more than one because there are more. A bunch of the teeth are broken out of the side of the skull with that pile of teeth there, but
Wow.
that Nanotranus had didn't lose enough teeth to account for all of the loose teeth that were there. So that Nanotranus's buddies were there, and when the ground started shaking, they ran away. Nobody got eaten, which is what happens most of the time. No bones were
Mm.
drug away. Everything was
Mm.
just preserved from that one moment of time. And it's very
Wow.
much like another group of dinosaurs that was found in the Gobi Desert called the fighting dinosaurs. And this,
Mm.
interestingly, is a theropod and again a ceratopsian, Protoceratops and Velociraptor were preserved locked in combat, kind of like this. And so there are so few times that you can see this with predator and prey at the time of death. Just that's this little moment in time. It isn't just a snapshot here. It's a movie,
Mhm.
that it is to me. That is certainly by far the most incredible thing that's been found in my lifetime,
Mm.
and it's going to be hard for anybody to top that. It is the top fossil in the world.
Yeah, I mean that's incredible. Hopefully, if I ever die in a duel, there's an earthquake right afterwards, so it's preserved.
I think this beautifully parlays into just some. You've been a part of so many unbelievable digs and iconic discoveries, including Sue, which we've all seen in the Fields Museum. We'd love to hear more about the origin and just crazy story that is Sue, from uncovering it all the way through its inevitable auction in the late 90s. Tell us more about this collector story.
So it's a long story, so I'll try to give you the Reader's Digest
Sure, sure,
version.
sure, sure, sure,
So
sure, sure.
so in 1990, we were working at a duckbill dinosaur bone bed, the Ruth Mason Quarry, near Face, South Dakota. And Susan Hendrickson, one of the people who was volunteering, was there, and she went for got up in the morning. We were trying to finish out digging up a Triceratops skull. It was nearby. And so we were going to go up there and had a flat tire. And then I tried to pull the pull the spare out, and it was well, the tire was almost flat, but the spare was really flat, and the tire pump hose was broken. So so we had to make a quick trip to Face, South Dakota, about 13 miles away, and so we went down there, and Susan went out prospecting, and then we said we'll meet at the Triceratops skull. So we got back to the Triceratops skull, started digging on it, and Susan comes up with two pieces of bone in her hand, and I looked at it and never seen the inside of a T-Rex vertebrae before, but I knew that's what it was. That's
Hmm.
because it was filled with this honeycomb structure called trabecula and with little air chambers inside. So theropods like Tyrannosaurus rex are very closely related to birds. They have an avian respiratory system. That avian respiratory system allows birds to fly at 30,000 feet, some of them, where we can't even stay alive for a couple of minutes at that elevation. That it is because they have a one-way respiratory system where they pump air through their lungs, not just into and out of. We always have a little bit of air left inside of our lungs when we
Hmm.
exhale, and so it goes from the rear of the lung and out the front. So every time they breathe in or out, they're putting fresh air in their lungs. Anyway, so I knew that and it was too big to be anything other than T-Rex. It wasn't a small theropod; it was something very big. And so we ran over to the site about a mile away, and uh, I looked. There's this, bunches of literally thousands of fragments of bone on the ground, and up in the cliff face, you could see cross sections of bones, and then I crawled up and I saw three articulated vertebrae, and I knew that this was something super fantastic. And I actually did a video where I described exactly what we were going to find, which turns out we did. Um,
Wow.
and so we dug it out. We made arrangements with the rancher who had actually invited us onto his property to look for fossils, and so we had permission to be there. But we made an arrangement to purchase the dinosaur. And this is in a day and age where nobody was paying anybody any money for fossils. We like to pay the ranchers something, and so we were planning on putting this dinosaur in our museum. So we all agreed on $5,000 and paid him $5,000 for, and then when the dinosaur was uncovered but not taken out of the ground. And then
How
so
much how much did you have when that $5,000 deal went down?
oh,
Did
we
you
could
just
see,
have
you
a
could
few
see.
bones, or you knew
No,
it
no, no,
was
no.
like a huge?
You could see everything. So you got to remember, we were putting it in the museum. We weren't going to. Dinosaurs did not sell for millions of dollars in those days. The most expensive dinosaur that sold was probably the ones that we were selling, which were $250,000 completely mounted. But to support our work, that's how we make our money. But we were building a museum, and
Hmm.
my childhood dream, and he was happy that it was going to go to the museum and all of this. And then anyway, so we worked on the dinosaur and got out of the ground, took it to our lab, worked on it for 21 months, and I get up one morning and I'm taking a shower and I knock on the door. I lived in a trailer house right behind the institute. Shows you how much money we made. Um, and one of the gals, Lynn, who's still working here, said, "There, better get out here. We're surrounded by the FBI." And so I walk out the door and they've got police ribbon around the place and a search warrant there. We were hiding at our facility, a T-Rex. So we'd had literally several thousand people come to see her while we were working on her in the back lab. We weren't hiding anything and concealed in our property. Anyway, so there was a seizure that lasted 3 days. On the first day, there were a few kids started protesting because everybody knew this was in the newspapers and everything that we had her. We were, because we're planning on building a museum and all kinds of wonderful newspaper articles, and then so we helped pack the dinosaur up so it would avoid as much damage as we could possibly avoid, and uh, the uh, the raid went on for 3 days, and then we sued the federal government. Now, I wouldn't try that at home, boys and girls. But I do it again.
You do it again. Let's go. Let's
Because
Yeah,
it
go.
was the right
amazing.
thing to do because they lied.
Yeah.
They said it was found on federal land. It was not found on federal land. It was found on private land. But the title,
Mhm.
the land was belonged to Morris Williams. Morris Williams is a Native American, and
Mhm.
Native Americans have the ability, which they get very few benefits. Believe me, they've been screwed forever. Uh,
Mhm.
but one of the few benefits they get is they can, to avoid property taxes, they can put their land in trust with the federal government. But they've
Mhm.
said the federal government owned it, and that we battled that until we finally won in court that the federal government didn't own it. So uh, then, in the meantime, I'm saying this is not a good idea to sue the federal government because we were then eventually there was several other seizures and searches and because we were suing the federal government and said bad things about the prosecutor, told people how he was wearing makeup for the raid, which he was, because it was a big publicity stunt. Anyway,
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
we made a bunch
Yeah.
of people mad, and so we ended up with a 38 count 53 charge indictment against myself, my brother, my other business partner, Bob Farrar, a person who worked for us, a person who we bought fossils from, and a person we sold fossils to. Like if I'd have been convicted of all of the charges that I was charged with, it would have been like 353 years in prison, which I pointed out at the time was more time than Jeffrey Dahmer had
Oh my.
been. So
Oh my God. That's
long story.
also more time than we've even known dinosaurs existed.
Yeah.
That's
That's true.
true. That's true. That's true.
That's
Just
true.
think what I know when I got out of prison by the
That's
time I
true.
got out.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, I was eventually convicted of two felonies, basically customs violations. I brought $31,700 out from a trade show in Japan within restrictively endorsed traveler's checks, so they were safe to travel with. You don't carry $31,000 cash, and deposited in the bank, paid taxes on them. We had actually two customs agents testified that if they're restrictively endorsed, you don't have to. And they actually had the traveler's checks with our. I always take a stamp with our stamp right on them. I told them what I did, and then when they showed them, I said, "See." Anyway, but the judge said it's not a defense that the traveler's checks were restrictively endorsed if you find him that he brought them into the country, which I did. You must find him guilty. And the second one was Susan Hendrickson and I on one of our trips to Peru, where we worked for several years. We took a total of $15,000. I was carrying 7,000. She was carrying $8,000. Um, uh, and it turns out if you carry more than $10,000 out of the country, which I didn't know, you have to file a form. So when after this, I was sentenced to 24 months in prison and 24 months probation. And when I was checked into prison, the guy who was checking me in, he says, "Did you see this?" I said, "What?" And he said, "Come here." He said, "Look at this. It says reason for incarceration, failure to fill out forms." He said, "Man, you must have really pissed somebody off."
Oh my God, man. That's
So
wild.
So in the end,
It,
we appealed, of course, and we lost all our appeals. We lost Sue. Um, I was able to, so I was a 24 month, so I served 21 months and I got 3 months off for good behavior. And then I served my full 24 months probation. Um, and then Sue, they finally determined that Sue was, quote, the judge determined that Sue was, quote, land. And therefore, because I paid the rancher before it was on the trailer, if it would have been on the trailer, it would have been personal property. But because I paid for it while it was in the land, that still attached to the earth, that it was land. It was part of the earth, part of the real estate, basically real estate.
Wow.
That then, but actually, and it turns out that that was actually a decision that turns out is okay. Not, I mean, it's not okay that we lost Sue, but because that was some of the reasoning that came about when another court case that we did with the state of Montana in federal court in the Ninth District, where where owners of the mineral rights tried to claim ownership. So anyway, Sue then was taken away. We didn't have any access to her during this whole time, but she was then interestingly during the raid, the the acting U.S. attorney Kevin Schieffer said, "We have to save this for the people of America, and these people were going to put her up and sell her to the highest bidder." Of course, we had no intention of selling her, but in the end, because Morris Williams was the only person besides us which should have gotten her would have been Morris Williams,
Hmm.
because it was not federal property, never was.
Hmm.
And so the federal government then, ironically, took her to Sotheby's and she was sold at private auction. I mean, to
Wow.
the highest bidder. And that highest
And,
bidder was the Field Museum, and for 8.36 million with the auctioneer's commission.
and can you also put into perspective for us just how rare and how scarce assets like Sue and Stan and others are? Like, what is the circulating supply of T-Rex fossils? How does one determine what a full fossil is? Is it by bone count and bone volume? And then maybe some commentary on how you've seen this whole thing turn into an asset class, right? It's a collectible asset class. In the 90s, for a mere $5,000,
Yeah.
you and I, we were in person and we saw Gus sell for $50 million, right? Just
Yeah.
25, 30 years later. I'd
That's
love
that's
to hear
that's
more.
that's a bit of an exponential raise in price.
That's right. That's right.
The same
That's
number,
right.
interesting, 5,000 to
Yeah,
50 million.
that's right.
But
Not bad.
anyway, I mean, so I always felt that they should be worth. So most of the value of a fossil is the amount of work that goes into it. The other part of the value of a fossil is its rarity and its preservation. And but the so a T-Rex is would take normally, to do it properly, from the moment of discovery till it's mounted in a museum, is about 25,000 hours, human hours of work. That's
Wow.
a lot. That's a lot of labor. And you have to know what you're doing, because you can take something that's worth $5,000 and make it worth $500 pretty quickly if you don't know what you're doing.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, it's quite a trip from 35 years ago, to go from 5,000 to $50 million. When Sue was going up for auction, my estimate was she'd sell for. I figured she could bring $1 million. If there's ever $1 million fossil, it's going to be Sue. And a good part of that value, I felt, was all of the publicity that she had, that was surrounded her. It was a story that went worldwide. Everybody knows the Dinosaur Sue. And so, when the bidding went to 7.6 million, I was elated. Not, I mean, we had a friend that was going to try to bid. He was going to bid up to 1 million, and he actually bid up to 1.5 million. Um, but it was, when it went past 1 million, I'm thinking, well, wow, that's kind of cool. Our people really did good work, that.
Mhm.
So anyway, I find it I find it very satisfactory, very satisfying, I guess is the better word, that fossils now are worth a lot of money, because people realize how truly wonderful they are, and they get the true value, and the beautiful too. The beauty of some fossils is just, some of them will make you cry. They're so beautiful. And
Oh yeah,
and
jaws literally like on the ground when we see these specimens. Like it's just the coolest thing ever.
yeah, and they're real, if a painting that some guy spends an afternoon creating, can sell for $50 million, why shouldn't a T-Rex that somebody spent 25,000 hours working on be worth that?
Mhm.
I think the idea that fossils, that there's something wrong with that, is nuts. We
Mhm.
live in a society that is driven by a free market, and whatever something is worth, whatever something, a willing buyer and a willing seller are willing to exchange,
Mhm.
that's what a fossil really is worth. and
Mhm.
and and so, I mean, I don't find it disturbing at all. I find it satisfying and gratifying.
And when you're looking, let's say you're in the collector's shoes and you're allocating capital and you're making investments in fossils, what are the heuristics that these investors and collectors are using to assess value? Tell us more about that.
Well, I'm not, I can't tell you exactly what they are doing, but I can tell you what they
Mhm.
should do.
Okay, even better. Even better.
So, so provenance is number one. You better have a record of exchange. You know, it came from this ranch. This rancher was under contract with this person who's collecting it. Um, some fossils have been found many years ago, and some of that's going to be hard to come by. But you get whatever provenance you can. That's super important. Number one, you want to make sure also that it doesn't is legally possessed, not just so there are some countries that do not allow the export of fossils. They some countries that has changed over time, so you should double check of when that fossil was okay to be exported and does it fit into that, so the chain of chain of ownership. You should if you should know exactly what's been done to that fossil. So the more photographs of that fossil from the ground through the lab and into the hands of that collector, the more photographic evidence you have of what's been done, the better. Again, there's some there just is not available, but you should strive to try to find that information. Um, you should know what bones are there, what bones are represented, and what percentage of each bone is there. In other words, is this just
Mhm,
10% of this one bone, or is it 100%? Well, most of them are going to be 99.99% if they're like 100%, whatever, but
mhm,
virtually 100%. But there's always going to be something lost, probably because of weathering and the actions of the preparator even. But so that should be very clear. Um, if what I like to do is take an ultraviolet light and look. First I get a description from the person what it is, and then if you're looking at the fossil, you check. Said, oh, is this guy truthful with me?
You see what work they
That
did.
how
Yeah.
come how come this one half of the tooth fluoresces very well, but this other half, which must be paint, doesn't?
mhm,
So
mhm,
so you want to trust the person that you're getting that fossil from. I think one advantage to auction houses is that, especially Sotheby's. I mean, that's the only one that we uh, from Sue on. They treated us so well when Sue was being auctioned, and working with Cassandra was just marvelous. And she has sort of the same ethics that I do, and believes that you need to tell people what's there and what's not there. So just make sure that whoever you're buying it from that you trust. And
mhm,
if you really worry about something, so let's say I bought a T-Rex, and man, that femur looks like it's not real. It looks like it's kind of light. It's kind of, is that real bone or is it plastic? And you take and have it CT scan, and in the CT scan, you see there's only a little tiny chunk of bone there, and you were told that it was a whole bone, and so that's what I call fraud,
mhm,
and which I
I
think
know there's a lot of it. Yeah.
yes, there is fraud that goes on, and it's having a composite skeleton. Composite skeletons are fine for just because they're still nice exhibit specimens and that, and they're less expensive or should be less expensive than if it was just one individual. But if you have a composite specimen, and you're selling a composite specimen, you better tell the buyer that, because a lie of omission is still a lie. And so you have to be, you want to work with somebody that's truthful, somebody you trust, someone's got a good reputation, and then, doesn't hurt to check. So
mhm,
you should see, what are called osteographs, bone diagrams. There are two different kinds of osteographs. One that shows basically bones represented, and one that shows actual surface area visible.
mhm,
So,
mhm,
let's say on bones represented, that chunk of femur, if you can really identify it as a femur, that still represents that bone. So that would show up as a whole bone, but you have to show restoration also, because
mhm,
that's misleading unless you see that. And for instance, then we use something called bone count. We use that, and that's because everybody gets the same number. So bone count is bones represented, So a T-Rex has approximately 300 bones. We don't know the exact number because we have not found one to the tip of the tail yet. And there may be other things that we recognize over time. We've recognized certain bones. I've identified certain bones and actually named them that we didn't know T-Rex had. But anyway, approximately 300 bones. So if you have 150 bones, that's 50% bones by bones represented. And
Hmm.
it's a count. It's counting. It's a very simple thing that everybody's going to get that same answer as long as that you're counting that same bone. Um, there's people that use a thing called bone volume, which is super misused because they will that little piece of femur, and then they have a little piece of a pelvis and a little piece of this and a little piece of that, and then they draw it as all that, and then they look at it or use a program that shows area that's shaded and area that's not, and so the bone density is 45% when there's only like two bones there and they're not even complete, or six
Hmm.
bones and they're not even
Yeah,
complete. And
And when
that's
you when you
that's what I call BS.
when you're on these dig sites, right? Or most of the time, like when you go out for fishing and you put your little worm on the bait, you throw it out. Sometimes you're successful, sometimes you're not, and you just keep going back. Like when you find something, what percent of the time is it actually a full-fledged fossil versus just fragments? I think we'd love to just understand how scarce are these things? Are there millions of dinosaurs out there to be found? Is it truly a needle in a haystack?
There are millions of dinosaurs out to
Hmm.
be found, but
Hmm.
not all of them are exposed on the surface. Every year, more of them weather out. Every year, more of them bits and pieces weather away. Um,
Hmm.
so, to give you a hint, I've been out in the field. Most years I'm out in the field, probably a total of 3 to 4 months. Sometimes it's more than that. Sometimes it's like 7 months if I'm working like in Peru. So I did in there in winter and working here in the Hell Creek or something like that. Um, but I have never found a T-Rex skeleton. I found lots of T-Rex bones, but I've never found a T-Rex skeleton. And I found a couple specimens where there's like three bones. That's 1%, but that doesn't count as a skeleton. So I know what I'm looking for.
Hmm.
So, so most of the fossils, most of the good fossils that we dig have been found by amateurs, by people who are ranchers or farmers, or people who are just out looking for fossils and they have permission to look and they find something cool and tell the rancher, and the rancher calls us up and we go out and dig it.
And
It's
you think that's mostly luck by these people who are finding them?
no, well, because so think of it like this. In astronomy, most of the discoveries of comets and asteroids are made by amateurs because there's way more of them. You know,
Hmm.
there's I'm alone. I do have other people working with me too, but our typical when we're out exploring will be maybe four people. And so our eyes are looking, 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 looking. Someone can walk right past something really good, and the next person sees it. Um, uh, like so, there was a whole bunch. Let's see how many people, probably a dozen people. We were looking at a Triceratops skull that was found on private land, and the collector was worked at a university who, because of the fences and stuff, didn't have a GPS, whatever. He started digging on it. It turned out it was really private. So we went out to look at and of course he didn't have permission from the ranchers. So we went out to look at that, and then we looked at it and said, yeah, we can come dig this up and make an arrangement with you guys. And while we were walking around, probably we were all kind of in close proximity and stuff, and I found, and after several people walked past it, the best Stygimoloch skull that's known to science. And it's disarticulated. It's fantastic. The dome, I mean, it was like a no-brainer to see it. It looked like a human skull laying there, and it was in black matrix, but the bone was a kind of a light gray because it had been bleached by the sun, and most of the dome was being shown, like I said, about the size of a human skull, and everybody walked past it, didn't see it, I mean, sometimes, and I'm just lucky I got to find. That's kind of my coolest dinosaur that I found. But anyway, and Disarticus
That's
too, which makes it super important. But anyway, so it, the more eyes, the better. The more people looking for fossils, the more cool stuff's going to be found. The more people digging fossils correctly. Not everybody can does a good job in collecting fossils. You got to, you have to have a list. You can learn all these things, but you need to do a geologic section. You need to map those bones as you're taking them out. You need to collect ancillary fossils. You need to, take notes and make sure that you got a good GPS on the site so anybody can go back if we need to get more information about that site. And then when you get it in the lab, you better know what you're doing because you can sure screw something up very quickly. But the more people looking for fossils, the more people collecting fossils, the more data points we as scientists have so that we can learn more about these animals, which some of them are super rare. I mean, like T-Rex, interestingly, now more T-Rexes have been dug commercially than have been dug by institutions. That was interesting. Tom Carr wrote a paper
that's a cool
about it. That
fact.
was horrible. And I said, "What about all those new data points you got? Isn't that a cool thing?" And and we have
Yeah, to me that
technology
just sounds like more T-Rexes, which is great.
that we can scan those bones. We can preserve the data. The object, of course, is cool. That's the coolest part of it. But if you're doing a scientific research and you get permission to scan those to preserve that data, especially once they're prepared, you can look at for pathologies, for healed injuries and evidence of disease. You can make discoveries about these things from these specimens too. And and so somebody buys a T-Rex for $50 million and then they get tired of it. What are they going to do? Throw it away? Put it in the dumpster? I don't think so. I think they're going to donate it to a museum.
Hmm.
I mean, we don't know what's going to happen to Gus now, but I'll bet you dimes to donuts that that's going to be in a museum eventually.
Yeah, there's a lot of precedent to that. And that makes a lot of sense too, that the amateurs can quite literally cover more ground and identify, these specimens. Now, it
This is how you find fossils. These two things right here. This is the high tech way of finding fossils, and it's the only high tech way.
That's crazy to think about. I wonder if, 20 years from now we're going to be talking about new AI technology that, opens up more opportunities to find things because it's crazy to think about, because effectively, you see uh specimens like Gus sell for 50 million and others, and it's effectively putting a bounty on similar specimens to be discovered. And the more big sales that happen, you would think that more and more people become interested because the bounty to find similar or better ones goes up. What do you think the odds are that like better ones are found in the next 25 years, particularly for the most popular dinosaurs, maybe because of movies or whatever, but for the T-Rexes,
Well,
raptors, so on.
Well, since Sue was found, and then people got the idea that well, it has value, that there've been a whole mess of more T-Rexes found. So the chances are awesome for some really super wonderful discoveries. And yeah, no, it's uh, we live in this golden age, and the more dinosaur, especially, but making sure that people learn how to do this properly. If you want to do this, and you better learn about it. You just can't go out and randomly do it. You'll be very disappointed.
Mm.
Oh, trust
Mm.
me, I have been.
Sure. And
And
how many T-Rexes are out there in the circulating supply? Same thing with Stegosaurus and Triceratops, and teach our audience too, like what is the threshold for a fossil, right? As opposed to just a bag of bones that you find.
So,
Like, how
so,
do you guys think about that?
so with T-Rex, what I look for is scientifically significant specimens. So
Mhm.
there's lots of individual T-Rex bones. Uh, Occasionally there are specimens that are only a few bones that tell us something really cool. Like there's a T-Rex that we dug called Steven that has maybe a dozen bones. So rib, partial maxilla, a femur, some vertebrae. But those vertebrae were preserved where the centrum, the big part of the vertebrae, was separated from the spines. They were bitten apart. And
oh,
that was the first time I noted that we had cannibalism. T-Rex were cannibals. So that's a significant specimen. it was also found with little fragments of eggshell, which are very rare in the Hell Creek. We don't know what that means, but anyway, then so that's a significant specimen, even though it was just a few bones and the preservation wasn't great. Um, then there's another specimen called Foxy Lady, the only T-Rex with its own theme song. Foxy Lady has some really cool healed injuries
Mhm.
in its ribs and in its in the bones that we have from the skull that tell us more about those snapshots of life. And Foxy Lady has probably, I'm trying to remember, maybe only it's under, I think maybe 50 bones max. So it's not very complete. It's with 300 bones in a T-Rex, but those bones are very important bones. Every last bone from the lower jaws is there. That's 7 bones from the lower jaw. Anyway, so it it's sorry, 14 bones, not 7. Um, so it's a very 7 bones on each side, um, with very cool puncture wounds, healed puncture wounds from face biting, and and the one proves that those are actually puncture wounds because there's a chunk of bone that's healed off, broken away, and then healed crooked. So that one actually proves that this whole idea of those holes in the jaws were absolutely not all from a bacteria that's still, or sorry, a fungus that still is alive today and kills every bird that it does. Because every last T-Rex has these puncture wounds. Some you can line up beautiful tooth marks in the line and all this. And so they very thin bone here in the back of the lower jaws, and so easily punctured. So whether those and literally all of them have it. So that may have even been preserved from their younger days when they were learning to hunt and playing with their siblings and face biting and poking each other in the jaws, or maybe also probably happened when they try to kill each other too, going for the throat. But anyway, just so every,
Makes
from quoting a movie, every sperm is sacred. Every T-Rex, there's probably something you can learn from it, but some of them they're like so the leg there was that we the only thing we've ever sold at auction to raise money for our new museum project to for helping to renovate an old winery. That is for our museum. That one we did scans, so we've preserved that information. But it was a leg. There was nothing remarkable about it. In other words, it was a cool leg. It was a nice leg, and partial foot, but it wasn't what I consider to be a scientifically significant specimen. So we were okay with that, by putting it up for auction and finding it a new home so that we can have a better home for the other fossils that we need to preserve and find a place for.
that makes a lot of sense. One thing I'm curious about, and I'm sure you know the answer or have some sort of judgment on it. When you find a few bones and you think, man, there might be a full dinosaur here, but obviously excavating it costs a lot of money. And at some point, if you find a few more bones, maybe that increases your confidence that the full thing is going to be there. And but maybe if you keep going and you don't find more, when do you call it? Like when do you call it off and stop trying to find a full dinosaur? And when do you sort of just, I don't know if it's gut instinct or what the metrics that you're looking at are, but to add additional investment and keep going in an excavation?
So if it's something that I've determined is something new, I'll make a big freaking hole. That, um, if it's a T-Rex, we make big holes. You find 3, 4 bones, you make a big hole. Um, uh, it's hard to know. Sometimes you're stopped by just the reality of it. All right, I've gone 50 feet from the last bone, and there's this big cliff that it's going to cost me, $50,000 to take down another bite so I can get another 10 feet or 10 feet into the hill, and I've got 6 bones so far, and I've dug the size of a football field. I think I'm done. So, but and then there are times even on the other end of the spectrum where will find a specimen that is seemingly unremarkable and poorly preserved, say even a Triceratops or a duck-billed dinosaur, Demontosaurus, that if rock is horrible, it does not clean away from the bone well, um, uh, and it the preservation of the bone isn't great. I just walk away because
Mm.
there's so many fossils in so little time. You have to
Hmm.
choose wisely. Choose
Sure.
wisely, grasshopper. Anyway, it's an important thing to realize. There's only so many days in the year and only so many years that you can actually do this. And
Mm.
I'm 74 now, so that means that when I turned 70, I had to realize a third of my life is gone. So I have to be very particular on what I dig now.
Hey, you've got at least 20 more T-Rexes in you, so
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
hopefully.
figure at least that many.
and so I mean, there's been so many you've discovered. I mean, Stan is another extremely significant specimen, and yeah, there's almost a joke in the T-Rex community that every T-Rex has a little bit of Stan in it, right? Because you've made so many casts, and the kind of anatomical understanding of Stan has informed a lot of our general understanding of T-Rex. Tell us the story of Stan as well.
So Sue was found in 1990, and in 1992, we were in January. Uh, I was just visiting with a friend of mine who was an amateur collector, and he said, "Oh, I was just visiting with Stan Sakerson, and he showed me this string of vertebrae." And I said, my ears cock up like this. And I said, "String of vertebrae?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, it turns out it was just a Triceratops." So he showed it to the guy at the School of Mines Museum, and he says just Triceratops, and walked away. And so he found that like 5 years before, and I said, do you think Stan would show it to me? Because anything that's got articulated vertebrae in the Hell Creek is something that could be very important because it's going to be a skeleton. Good chance of it being a skeleton. And so I went to see it, and like from 20 foot away, he had it covered with a tarp and dirt, and the dirt and the tarp in the 5 years had weathered away. So it was almost like it was there originally when he found it, although damaged over 5 years worth of rain and wind. But anyway, from 20 foot away, I said, "Holy crap, it's another T-Rex." So, so that was pretty nice. And so we were digging that, and this is so we started digging that in April, and had it out of the ground by May 14th when May 14th of that year is when the government came in and seized Sioux. And then then we had Stan for many years, and we prepared it and we molded and cast it. And Stan had probably the most significant thing about Stan was it had a disarticulated skull, very complete disarticulated skull that means it was undistorted by crushing. Sue's skull had been crushed, and so they kind of tried to do some uncrushing for the exhibit specimen for using a cast, but Stan's skull, the individual parts, there was a little bit of crushing here and there, but we were able to correct some of that, and we were able to then assemble a skull, and it taught us all about things like cranial kinesis. Everybody thought the T-Rex skulls were fused and they couldn't move; they were just a rigid skull like a human skull, and but it turns out that it's a very kinetic skull. A kinetic skull means that the bones have the ability to move in relation to each other. This is the way a snake, for instance, can swallow something larger than its head. But it also, in the case of T-Rex, who use these big, basically banana-shaped chisels to dig its way through carcasses and bite through even the femur of another T-Rex, they could bite in half. That power and stress that you'd put on teeth and bones, they needed to move in order to move that stress away so you don't have broken teeth and broken bones. They did break lots of teeth in their lives, of course, but this made it possible for them still to eat carcasses and not lose all their teeth in one meal. Um, anyway, plus they also grew teeth constantly through their entire life, but that was something that nobody knew about before. It also got us um, um, uh, one of the things that when we found Sue, my brother said, "Why did you name it Sue? What if it's a boy?" And I said, "What if it is a boy?" I named it Sue, and I said, "Well, even the Johnny Cash song, 'A Boy Named Sue,' it's still okay." But then I started thinking about sexual dimorphism and can we find males and females in, and we find that because we had two good skeletons, that we had access to originally, and then lost access to one, but we knew that the for a while, I still have access to Sue, by the way, um, that there are two forms of skeletons, a robust and a gracile. So that could either be different species, or most likely it's sexual dimorphism. In other words,
Hmm.
one's a boy and one's a girl. And through some of my other research, the more robust ones, the only one we know for sure that's published is one called B. rex at the Museum of the Rockies, because it has medullary bone in its femur. And medullary bone uh, occurs in birds only during ovulation. So if it has medullary bone, you know it's a
Hmm.
female. If it doesn't, you don't know what it is. So
Wow.
that one turned out to be a robust individual. And also with the robust individuals, with Sue and many other of the robust individuals, have injuries at the base of the tail, which I think might be copulation injuries. So during rough sex, or maybe not even rough sex, just because they're heavy animals, they could damage the base of the tails. There is one exception to this, a gracile form that's at the Tate Museum in Casper, Wyoming, called Lee Rex, that has a terrible injury to the base of the tail, but it's a gracile individual. And so that if I'm right about the gracile being male, then this would be sort of, I call this the Brokeback Mountain Rex anyway.
Oh my God.
That's so funny. That is
That
so
is
funny.
funny.
So, but
I
animals do, but animals, I mean, this whole thing about sexuality is not a yes or a no. It's a continuum. And
Hmm.
and so it is not, I mean, living animals, males copulate with other males, and females try to copulate with other
Oh
females,
yeah, and then you've got
and
stuff like seahorses where they're like, changing genders midlife.
well, or the males carry the young. And
Yeah.
fishes can change genders. Some birds can change genders. Um,
Mhm.
it's this whole stupid political BS that goes on just kind of is so irritating to someone who's a scientist. But anyway, so but it's funny to say the Brokeback Mountain Rex.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome, man. That's a good name. Where did the name Foxy Lady come from?
Lloyd Fox. The guy, it was on county land. It's land owned by Harding County, which gave us permission to collect the dinosaur. But Lloyd Fox, the rancher who lived right next to it and leased that bit of property, found it. So I said Foxy Lady because it was robust.
I've got a question for you. If you could go back like any time between like 50 million years ago and 300 million years ago, where would you go and what would you look for? If you could look for one habit of one dinosaur or go to a specific time because you want to see a specific thing, like where would you want to go and what would you want to see?
I guess having a photo blind at the end of the Cretaceous, I would love to see, because I'd love to see these animals alive. I mean, we get a really good idea of what they were like in Jurassic Park, but most of these animals are alive in my brain, and I want to see them with my eyes too. So yeah, I would like to go to, the basically Hell Creek time, the
Hmm.
66 million years ago, just before that asteroid hit. I'd like to be able to have a quick exit, just as I see that flash from the asteroid. I'd like to have a quick exit because I would
Yeah,
be dead if I waited very long.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
makes
yeah,
sense. Is
yeah,
there
yeah.
something like that you would want to see, like a habit that you would want to see? Like, would you want to see a T-Rex laying eggs or like,
Yes,
fighting or like something
yes.
specific that we don't know the answer to
Well, I
that you
would, I
could
would,
get the answer?
I would, I have a hard time figuring out how they made love. I think I would be really interesting to see that. I mean, and then Triceratops, all these huge, huge animals. I mean,
Yeah.
anyway, because I study sexual dimorphism, I have, I guess I'm interested in sex, you might say. But anyway, looking at being able to actually see these huge animals, how do sauropods make love? You know, what, can you imagine? mounting in the normal way that mammals do. It just
It's
doesn't
like an
make any
earthquake.
sense.
Yeah, I don't even. I
Yeah, or
don't,
I
yeah.
want I would like
Yeah.
to see that. I would like to watch that fight with the dueling dinos where the Triceratops was fending off this group of nanos and then takes a big kick and breaks the face of this one nano, falls down the ground, and then all of a sudden the earth starts shaking and they get sucked down. Wouldn't that be a nice moment to see?
Yeah, that's
Oh,
crazy.
wow. Yeah, I've
So
never
tell.
thought about dinosaur pornography before, but now it's right there.
Yeah, a lot of boning going on here. Yeah, so
Yes.
tell us more about this new museum because this is something I'm super excited about. When it's done, I will absolutely come down and see it. What is in it? What are the things you're most proud of? It's a 40,000 square foot facility.
Yeah,
Say
so
more.
so we're going to open June 4th of next year. And it's going to be, you'll have to come the year after that too, because it's going to be a work in progress. So we're going to have so we're going to do a travel through time, which makes perfect sense. There have been other museums organized in a different way, but this is a natural history museum. So a travel through time, and then we're going to have also a section on geology and a section on mineralogy. So because I'm a geologist as well, and kind of the history of the Black Hills a bit, not just the geologic history, but a little bit about the mining history of the Black Hills. Um, uh, there will be one of the spectacular things we're working on right now is, of course, this uh, cool dinosaur, this Barosaurus, this 90-foot sauropod. That'll be so we when you enter, you'll get a little bit of a story about the Precambrian and the beginning of life. And then you go into the Paleozoic Hall, which means ancient life. And so we'll have trilobites and crinoids and that sort of thing up until the Permian extinction. And then you walk into the Mesozoic Hall where this Barosaurus will be. That'll be the biggest thing in the hall, at least for now. Um, and then you go through the not only dinosaurs, but ammonites, because ammonites have a particular beauty to the human eye because they're very geometrically formed. So they're coils, they're weird spirals. They did all kinds of wonderful things, and some of the shell is preserves this beautiful rainbows of colors and the morphology and the colors just they're just a feast for your eyes. And then eventually we're going to have what I call the Hall of Kings. At least this is the plan right now for nothing but tyrannosaurs. So
Wow.
we've placed T-Rexes in a museum in Leiden, Holland, original T-Rexes, the Children's Museum in Indianapolis, Indiana. We placed a T-Rex in the called Y-Rex in the Houston Museum of Natural Science. Of course, there's Sue and Stan. We have a cast skull of Sue, but of course, we have a cast skeleton of Stan. But those will be skeletons. We'll have two originals, Foxy Lady and Duffy,
Wow.
two original T-Rex skeletons. And then we'll go into the hall, basically the end of the age of dinosaurs. So Hell Creek time, Lance Formation time, and talk about the end of the age of dinosaurs, how they became extinct with this giant asteroid that was 6 miles, 10 kilometers across. It crashed into the Earth at 40,000 miles an hour, turning into pure energy. The force of 50 billion Hiroshima blasts, not million, billion, and how it destroyed the planet but didn't destroy life, and or almost destroyed the planet but didn't destroy life, and which also tells us that we'll be able to really cause our own extinction, but we do not have the power, nor will we have the power to destroy life on this planet.
Mm,
So just
mm.
so that's a little bit of the good news.
Yeah.
That is
And then
good.
we move it,
That is
then we
good.
do then we do the Cenozoic, so the age of mammals and up to the present time. And then you will go into the gift shop, which of course,
Wonderful.
because I'm a capitalist, that's a good place to send people in the end.
Oh, I'm gonna be
Absolutely.
buying all the gifts in your shop. That sounds
And,
fantastic.
and we're going to have a big working prep lab. Uh, One of the first things we'll have is one of the whales that I collected in Peru, Miocene whale,
Well,
and a really cool Triceratops skull. And we have a 3D printing lab in the museum as well, so people can watch the 3D printing of which is still is not up to making molds and casts, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good now. We've
Hmm.
got some really good machines, and so like this giant Barosaurus will be 3D printed
Wow.
because the original is in the new museum in Abu Dhabi.
Wow. Wow. And something else I would love to ask you is a lot of our audience, I mean, they're fanatic collectors, right? They're investing in trading cards and fine art and watches and this asset class of dinosaurs, while it once was $5,000 and now it's 50 million. Two-part question. One, if you had, say, $200 million, how would you allocate it as an investor in this dinosaur asset class? And then for the people that have, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, is there anything for them too? Are there ways that they can play it?
So the cool thing about fossils is you can hold them in your hand. This is a piece of
Mm,
history. Um, it inspires kids in a way that almost nothing else does. I call dinosaurs and fossils the gateway drug to science for kids. Um,
yeah, I like
so
that.
you can buy fossils for as little as 10 cents or as much
Mhm.
as $50 million, we've just learned. And there's there we're not going to run out of fossils. There Wherever there's sedimentary rock, there are fossils. Some of them, I mean, many of them are very rare, so you find them only occasionally. Some things there only been found one of such an item. Well, there were, of course, billions and billions of animals and plants that lived on this earth, and only a very small percentage of them is preserved. But and 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 most fossils will remain buried even after we're gone,
Mhm.
and we're just kind of a flash in the pan. We'll be very lucky if only a few of if even a few of humans are preserved as fossils. It'll have to be something like the dueling dinosaurs, where you're sucked down into quicksand or something, and then or where something is liquefied, and then nobody
Or
and then
Walt
it's not
Disney, right?
sediment. So maybe if I were going to
Mhm.
look for fossil humans, I'd probably look where today is the Mississippi Delta. There's going to be
Mhm.
probably some good fossils there, and there should be some humans in there too, washed down the river, buried in the silt, and they'll be remain buried. They're not going to be washed away for a long time. Anyway, um, so I mean, I would definitely. I think fossils to me are the coolest things. I spend all my money on fossils. That's what I do.
Sure, sure, sure.
That's why we have a museum because
Mhm.
we've been doing this forever. We collect fossils. We try to keep the best things we can that we can afford to keep, and then when I buy things that help tell the story of time. So
Yeah.
we are actively buying fossils all the time. I've just picked up a few really cool fossils for our museum today or yesterday that come from a friend of ours who just bought an old collection, and then they're selling the collection. We're trying to buy the important pieces for what we're trying to do that we haven't been able to find yet. And I just talked to another friend that had this cool Triassic fossil that's going to fit very nicely in a spot that was empty in my mental organization of what we're putting in the museum. Um, so I mean,
So what
buy
is
what
it
you
that
like.
you're?
The other thing is you should
Yeah,
buy
sorry,
what you
yeah.
like. You
Mhm,
should buy
mhm,
something that you like, not just because somebody says it's you should buy this because it's rare, or you should buy this because it's important. You should buy what you like because we buy things to we I guess we gather around us things that we have stories, things that have some meaning to us, things that it brings something it does something to our brain that makes us makes us feel, and whether
mhm,
that's beauty or the story of the thing, or here's this wonderful organism that was once alive that has survived for millions of years, and I can hold it in my hand. That's a pretty cool thing. The scientific
mhm.
curiosity is a part of humans, and I think it's been a part of humans since humans began.
Yeah.
And we find in cultures, various cultures, when you find, well, like the Native Americans in their medicine bags, well, in it, almost almost always will have a fossil or a geological specimen in their medicine bags. We have, as humans, we're attracted to the world around us. We appreciate living organisms, and we appreciate those who have lived on this earth as well, and are no longer here. And you know, it's part of our, not just, heritage isn't the right word. It's part of our being, our souls.
Mhm.
And when you think about uh, when the universe began, as the best of our understanding, during the Big Bang, hydrogen was created that quickly, I mean, super quickly, coalesced through gravity into stars that then started creating helium by fusing hydrogen because of the gravity. So you had atomic fusion. But it wasn't until the first supernova that we had heavier elements like carbon, phosphorus, oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur, all of the things that make up human beings. We are literally stardust.
Yeah.
So that we are related to all of these things that once lived in this world. They are the predecessors of us, and we're related to that distant galaxy with the same thing that that galaxy is made up of is made we're made up of too. And so we're part of this universe, and it's a way to experience the universe in 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 a way that, and it's tangible. You can hold it in your hand, you can feel it, you can put it under a microscope and study it. You can look at it and you can find something. Oh, here, this trilobite has a chunk out of it, and you look at it and closely, I wonder if that was an anomalocaris that took a bite out of that trilobite and it got away and it healed. And so you start relating with the stories that this fossil has to tell you. And I mean, it's just like it's better than reading a book, even when I love books.
Mm.
So
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's super real, and it's crazy just to think about, how long dinosaurs were around compared to how long we've been around, and I
Yep.
think that's pretty humbling. And then I remember someone said shared this with me once. I never forgot it. Uh, Obviously there's no technology for this, but uh, and it's so ridiculous. But theoretically, if you were 100 million light years away looking at Earth, you would see dinosaurs, not people, which is
That's right.
pretty crazy.
So what would you say are the most precious things in your personal collection? Things you will never sell, or if God forbid your museum was burning down and you can only run in and grab a few things, you would make
Yeah,
sure to
there was
keep.
a meteor coming straight for the museum.
Well, first of all, I could not run the meteor, or couldn't take the fossil away fast enough. But so
Yeah.
there are certain things that are precious. So as a scientist, we have a number of type specimens. In other words, the species is described like Tatankaceratops sacrocinorum, which was
Hmm.
named after Stan Sackerson, who found Stan and Duffy, and Steve Sackerson, who found Stevie, which is the T-Rex that had just a few bones, but it had some really cool stuff associated with it. Um, uh, and they and I, Stan found it, Steve and I and Stan dug it, but
Hmm.
it's a brand new ceratopsian. Well, not brand new. We described it a number of years ago with Chris Hott and I. But that is a super important specimen because it's the only one still. There's never been another one. But then we have, this is going to be hard because then we have, there's at least three undescribed leptoceratopsids, which are kind of like a small triceratops without horns, that have no names yet that we have here.
Wow.
There's of course, Foxy Lady and Duffy. I want to get those out of here. It's just uh, many precious things that are here. A frog from the Green River, a lizard from the Green River Formation. They're only 50 million years old, but still pretty cool. Um, uh,
Hmm.
some of the Badlands fossils that I collected when I was little. That little tooth that I found when I was 4 years old, it got me hooked. You know, what choosing those, I don't know. Yeah. So yeah, you have to
All of
remember. You
them.
have
You got
you
to
have
go
to
to the
re,
All of them.
museum to see it.
have to remember. So one of the things that we've done, my one of my mottos is I have to get I have to get those fossils before the hoarders do. And I'm the hoarder.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Which is why we have
That's hilarious.
such a
Yeah.
huge collection. That's and I mean we don't have just 10. We have like 100 and sometimes 1,000 of one thing just because you kind of need a large number in order if you're going to do any kind of a real study on something. So
So how can people support what you're doing, and when can everybody come see all of this?
so again, we open in June. Well, you can come see it now, but the new museum will be open. So we have let's see, let me back up a little bit. Our current exhibit, which is open today and it'll be open up until the just past Christmas next year, and then we'll close to move it to the new facility, which opens June 4th. But so supporting our organization, we have a nonprofit arm that has been set up that people can donate to that help with this thing, help with the educational part of the museum and help building exhibits and things, and hopefully in the end help also buying some more specimens for the museum. People, some of the our good specimens have been donated to us, donating to either the nonprofit or even to our for-profit one that we then put on in the exhibit. Come visit. We sell fossils. We're putting up an online store that's going to be pretty spectacular. That's what we're going to use our old facility here now. Our 4,000 square foot exhibit area will be also be for uh, more classy fossils, if you will, more expensive fossils, more things that
Sure.
are a little bit above just the things that you can buy in other shops and that. And then I mean, just go to Black Hill or bhigr.com. That's the acronym for Black Hills Institute of Geological Research. We sell casts of fossils. We've sold now something we must be approaching 100. I know it's more than 80 skeletons of Stan around the world. And then I don't know how many skulls. So whenever you see the face, whenever you see a T-Rex skull, it's almost always a Stan skull in some museum somewhere. And it's
Amazing. Yeah, I can't wait. We're gonna have to come see and do a tour or something. I have one more question for you, which is, broad, like taking a step back and looking at the dinosaur and fossil categories as a whole, the growth over the last 25 years has been enormous. What do you think, given everything that you know, the next 25 years looks like for the category at large? Do you think there will one day be a $1 billion dinosaur sale, or
whoa.
that, I mean, it sounds crazy now, but 50 million is a lot further away, in multiple terms from 5,000 than a billion is from 50 million. Where do you think things go from here?
I don't know. I mean, it's just kind of amazed. It amazed me when Sue sold for 8.36 million. So I'm just amazed every time there's an auction. Wow, that's kind of cool. Sold for that much. I mean, I think they're at least getting close to getting close to what they're worth. They're way far away from what they were when I first started the business and when we were first doing this, they now are bringing something that people can actually make a real living from. I mean, we've lived hand to mouth here at the Institute for most of those 50 years. So only existing because I get extra jobs and to find ways to earn extra money, even selling scrap metal and all kinds of weird things, cleaning swimming pools at the YMCA, and working as an analytical chemist at the State Experiment Station, doing all kinds of things to earn money just to eat. But but now and you can actually make a living at this, and that's pretty cool.
That's amazing.
And build a museum, which is even cooler. Not just make a living now. We're building a real giant museum, a 40,000 square foot facility.
Yeah, so Pete, this has been an absolute joy, a true pleasure. we would love to visit the new museum as it comes together. And as we dive further and further down this rabbit hole that is dinosaur fossils, we'd love to enlist you as an ally.
Well, we definitely need to keep in touch. And yes, you're absolutely invited to come to the opening.
Wonderful.
It's going to be a fun time because I mean, not many people get to see their literal dreams come true, and I'm so lucky. I have all these wonderful human beings in my life that have made this possible.
Beautiful.
That's
I think it's a
amazing.
perfect place to end, truly. And with that, Pete Larson, thanks for coming.